Please, don't hit me." The desperate cry echoed through the dark night at Cleveland Port. The flickering yellow lights cast eerie ghost-like shadows. A woman in an elegant suit was being forced against a shipping container, her trembling hands clutching a black leather briefcase. In front of her, 5 burly men with menacing faces surrounded her. One of them raised a steel rod high, his eyes cold as ice. The wind from Lake Erie swept past the steel cranes, producing a chilling whistle. Not a single soul dared to intervene. Only the sound of waves crashing against the shore and the frantic pounding of the woman's heart filled the darkness. Suddenly, a deep voice rose from behind. "Try touching her and see what happens." The entire group snapped around. They saw a man in grease-stained work overalls, his hands calloused from labor, but his eyes sharp as blades. They could never have imagined that this man's appearance would trigger a shocking secret. A secret capable of altering the fate of a billion-dollar corporation and forever changing the life of the trembling woman before them. But to understand why this worker was willing to confront 5 thugs, we must turn back the clock to 3 weeks earlier. Jack Sullivan, 37 years old, a man with broad shoulders who once wore a Navy uniform, now just a forklift operator at the Port of Cleveland. Every morning at 5:30, he was already at the port, dressed in bright orange protective gear and worn-out rubber boots. But what made Jack special wasn't his glorious past or his current job. It was the way he looked at his daughter. Megan Sullivan, 9 years old, with golden hair just like her mother, stood every morning at the small window of their apartment in the Flats. She waved goodbye to her father on his way to work, holding in her hand a little paper boat with the word Hope written in blue crayon. "Daddy, today I made 3 boats," Megan cheerfully announced when Jack came home. "I wrote Hope for everyone, because I think hope shouldn't be kept just for ourselves." Jack sat down beside his daughter, gazing at the carefully folded paper boats on the table. In their small 50-square-meter apartment, Denise's blue wool scarf, his late wife, still hung by the door, like a silent guardian protecting beautiful memories. "You know," Jack said softly, stroking his daughter's hair, "your mom used to do things like this too. She always said hope is like light. The more you share it, the brighter it becomes." Meanwhile, at Caldwell Tower, 60 floors soaring into the sky, Jasmine Caldwell stood before the large glass window, looking down at the city of Cleveland. At the age of 30, she had become the youngest CEO in the history of Caldwell Group, the 3rd largest logistics corporation in the United States. But behind that title was a lonely woman. Jasmine wore a black Armani blazer, her hair neatly tied up, her eyes always cold, as if accustomed to concealing her true emotions. "Jasmine," came the voice of her uncle Richard Caldwell from the office doorway. "The board meeting is in 15 minutes. There are some issues with the port that need discussion." Richard, 58 years old, with distinguished silver hair, always dressed in expensive suits, yet his eyes carried something sinister. He never called her niece, always just Jasmine, in a tone that was cold and detached. "What issues, Uncle Richard?" Jasmine turned around, sensing something was not right. "Oh, just some irregularities in the port's financial reports. Perhaps we'll need to adjust the control procedures." Richard's smile never reached his eyes. But Jasmine did not yet know that, for the past 3 months, she had unknowingly stumbled upon clues of a massive smuggling ring operating within her own family's company. And the ones leading this ring were the very people she trusted the most. That night, Jasmine could not sleep. She kept turning over the financial reports, the shipping contracts showing irregular signs, containers declared as carrying machinery, but the weight didn't match. Night shipments that weren't recorded in the official logs. She wasn't sure where the decision came from. Perhaps from the conscience of a responsible CEO? Perhaps from the memory of her late mother, Margaret Caldwell, who once taught her that dirty money will stain the soul. Jasmine had made up her mind. She would go down to the port herself to investigate. And that was the very decision that would change her life. And Jack Sullivan's life forever. It was Friday night, 11 o'clock sharp. Jack had just finished his shift and was cleaning up the last forklift when he heard hurried footsteps near container 47B. Something wasn't right. After 15 years working at the port, and 8 years before that in the Navy, Jack had learned how to read unusual sounds. A rough male voice. "Who do you think you are to investigate us?" A trembling female voice. I only wanted to understand the numbers in the reports." "Understand, huh? How about this? Do you understand this?" A loud thud followed, as if something had been slammed hard against the container wall. Jack turned off the engine and carefully moved toward the noise. Through the gap between containers, he saw a scene that made his blood boil. A young woman in a black suit was cornered by 5 large men. She clutched a briefcase tightly, her back pressed against the container wall, her face pale with fear. Frank Doyle, the night shift manager Jack had never liked, was raising a steel rod high. "Sign this, and forget what you saw. If not—" "Please, don't hit me," Jasmine pleaded, shrinking back, tears beginning to fall. Without another thought, Jack stepped out of the shadows. "Try touching her, and see what happens." His voice was deep, steady, carrying a force those thugs could feel instantly. This was no empty threat. It was a promise from a former sailor who had once fought in Afghanistan. Frank spun around, his face paling as he recognized Jack. "Sullivan? What the hell are you doing here?" "Trying to stop you from doing something wrong." Jack advanced step by step, his eyes fixed on the steel rod. "Let her go. This isn't your business, Sullivan." Walk away, Jack stared straight into Frank's eyes. He had seen too many men like this, bullies who were only strong when their target was weak. "The moment I saw 5 of you cornering one woman, it became my business." There was one thing Frank didn't know about Jack Sullivan. He wasn't just an ordinary dock worker. He had once been a petty officer 2nd class in the 7th Fleet, trained in combat, and deployed on countless dangerous missions, facing men far more ruthless than Frank. These calloused hands had saved many lives during his military career. "You think you're some kind of John Wayne?" Frank sneered, though his voice lacked its earlier confidence. "No," Jack said quietly. "I'm just a father teaching guys like you how to treat a woman." Jasmine looked at this man, her heart filling with an emotion she couldn't quite name. In 30 years of life, no one, absolutely no one, had ever risked themselves for her without expecting something in return. The men who approached her always had motives: money, power, or fame. But this man— "I'll count to 3, Jack said, his voice calm but his muscles coiled, ready. 1. Frank glanced around, seeing his 4 men looking uneasy. They had heard stories about Jack Sullivan, the guy who had taken down 3 men at once when they tried to steal from the warehouse last year. 2. Fine. Frank lowered the rod. "But this isn't over, Sullivan." When the thugs finally left, Jack stepped closer to Jasmine. She was still trembling, leaning against the container wall, her eyes wide with fear. "Are you all right?" Jack asked gently, keeping his distance so as not to scare her further. Jasmine nodded, but tears still streamed down her face. She wiped at her eyes, trying to stand tall again. "Thank you. I don't know what else to say. No need to thank me. Everyone has the right to be safe." That simple answer left Jasmine stunned. In her world, everything had a price. Every act of help came with conditions. But this man— Do you need me to repay you somehow?" she asked, still unable to believe anyone could be so selfless. Jack gave her a puzzled look. "Repay me? I only did what anyone should do." What anyone should do. Those words echoed in Jasmine's mind. In her world, how many people would actually do what they should, without calculating the benefit? That night, Jack came home with a restless heart. He checked on Megan, who was sleeping soundly, her latest paper boat still sitting on the nightstand with the words, "Hope for Scary Nights." Jack gave a sad smile. His 9-year-old daughter already understood fear more than any child should. Since Denise had died in a car accident 2 years earlier, Megan often suffered from nightmares. She was terrified of losing her father, the same way she had lost her mother. He sat down beside his daughter's bed, gently stroking her hair. Suddenly, she opened her eyes. "Daddy, I dreamed that you saved a very beautiful lady." Jack was surprised at his daughter's sensitivity. "How did you know?" Megan sat up, her blue eyes sparkling with a mix of playfulness and seriousness. "Because your face looks different today. Not your normal face, but your hero face." She paused for a moment, then added firmly, "Mom taught me to look at people through their eyes. And your eyes, they were shining like that today, which means you helped someone." Jack hugged his daughter tightly. Denise had taught Megan so much before she passed away. At times, he felt as though Denise was still here, living on through every word and action of their daughter. "Do you think Mom could be proud of me?" Megan asked innocently. "What do you think?" "I think Mom is smiling in heaven. She always liked it, when you helped people." That night, Jack lay on the old sofa in the living room, staring at Denise's wool scarf. He remembered what his wife used to say. "Jack, there's one thing I learned from being a social worker. People don't need you to save the whole world. They just need you to be there when they need you. Sometimes, all it takes is for you to stand up and say, 'Hey, this isn't right,' and that's enough to change someone's life." Jack wondered if maybe Denise had guided him to meet the woman tonight. Meanwhile, at Caldwell Tower, Jasmine sat in her 200-square-meter penthouse overlooking the entire Cleveland skyline. Yet she felt lonelier than ever. The vast glass walls, the expensive designer furniture, and the suffocating silence. She held her phone, wanting to call someone to share about what had happened that night. But call whom? Victoria Caldwell, her cousin who was always competing with her? Richard, the uncle she grew increasingly suspicious of? Or the so-called friends who only cared about parties and shopping? Jasmine realized a painful truth. She had no one with whom she could share her real thoughts. She opened her laptop and searched. Jack Sullivan Cleveland Port. Nothing but a few old articles about him receiving the Employee of the Year award 2 years in a row. A small photo, Jack standing next to a forklift, holding a little blonde girl smiling brightly. He has a family, Jasmine thought. A good man with a happy home. Why would he risk his life to save a complete stranger? Jack's words echoed in her mind. Everyone has the right to be safe. Simple, sincere, with no hidden agenda. For the first time in her life, Jasmine Caldwell had met a man who wanted nothing from her, and that both moved her and terrified her. 3 days after the incident at the port, Jasmine couldn't focus on her work. She sat in the CEO's office overlooking the port of Cleveland, her mind constantly drifting back to the man who had saved her. Not because he was handsome or charming, but because of the rare sincerity in his words. Everyone has the right to be safe. Jasmine, Richard Caldwell entered without knocking. You seem distracted. What's going on? Startled, Jasmine replied, Nothing, Uncle Richard. Just a little tired. Good. Because tomorrow we have an important meeting with the board about port matters. His eyes carried something sinister. Make sure you're well prepared. As Richard left, a chill ran down Jasmine's spine. She was becoming more certain that her uncle was involved in the irregular activities at the port. Suddenly, Jasmine made a decision. She took off her Armani blazer and changed into a simple white shirt and jeans, the most casual outfit in her wardrobe. She wanted to see Jack again, but not as a CEO. She wanted to meet him as just a normal person. Friday afternoon, 3:30. Jasmine parked her BMW at quite a distance and walked toward the workers' rest area at the port. Her heart raced, a sense of unease creeping in. This was the first time in her life she had set foot in a place like this. No gleaming marble floors, no soft piano music, only the smell of grease, the roar of machinery, and the hearty laughter of dock workers. Jack was sitting at an old metal table, in front of him a homemade sandwich box and a worn-out book. When he looked up and saw Jasmine, surprise flickered across his face, and he immediately stood. What are you doing here? Jack's voice carried clear concern. It's not safe, especially after what happened the other night. Jasmine took a breath, her hand tightening unconsciously around her purse strap. I wanted to thank you properly, and I wanted to know, why did you help me? Jack looked at her, his expression puzzled. I already told you. Anyone would have done the same. No, Jasmine shook her head firmly. Not everyone would. In my world, people only help when there's something in it for them. But you, Jack cut her off, pointing to the chair across from him. Sit down. Do you want something to drink? I only have instant coffee. Jasmine sat, a cold shiver running down her spine as she touched the hard, raw metal chair for the first time. She had never experienced anything so simple. To break the awkward silence, she asked, Do you have a family? Jack's face immediately lit up. Yes. My daughter, Megan. 9 years old. Just the two of you? Jack paused for a moment, then nodded. My wife passed away 2 years ago. A car accident. Jasmine's chest tightened, her voice dropping to a whisper. I'm sorry. That must have been so hard. The hardest part, Jack exhaled, was explaining to Megan why her mom would never come home again. But she's strong. She has her own way of dealing with the sadness. What way? Jasmine asked, her eyes genuinely curious. Jack gave a faint smile. She folds paper boats. On each one, she writes the word hope. She says hope always floats, even when everything else sinks. A 9-year-old girl who understood hope more deeply than Jasmine. A 30-year-old CEO who had everything in her hands, yet felt empty inside. Jasmine's throat tightened. At that very moment, the sound of small footsteps came from behind. Daddy! Megan Sullivan ran straight to Jack, her golden ponytail flying in the wind. She stopped short when she saw Jasmine sitting there, her round eyes wide with surprise. Oh, Daddy has a friend? Megan tilted her head, her voice filled with innocent curiosity. Megan, this is Miss Jasmine, Jack introduced. She came to thank me for helping the other night. Megan looked at Jasmine for a long moment, then broke into a radiant smile. Hello, do you want to see my paper boat? Before Jasmine could answer, Megan had already dug into her little backpack and pulled out a carefully folded yellow paper boat. On it, written in blue crayon, were the words, "Hope for Lonely People." "I made this one this morning," Megan said very seriously. "I felt like someone needed hope." Jasmine looked at the tiny boat in her hands, her heart trembling slightly. "Why did you write that?" she asked softly. "Oh, because last night I dreamed about a very sad lady. She lived in a really tall building, but she didn't have anyone to talk to." Megan tilted her head, her eyes shimmering. "Was that you?" Both Jack and Jasmine froze. How could a 9-year-old girl see through someone's heart like that? Jack gently patted his daughter's head, his voice carrying both pride and concern. "Megan has a special ability. Since she was little, she's been able to sense other people's emotions." "Mom said it's a gift," Megan added naturally. "Mom used to help a lot of people too. She said if you can understand someone's sadness, then you can help them find hope again." Jasmine felt her eyes blur with tears. Denise Sullivan, a woman she had never met, had left behind a beautiful legacy in her daughter's heart. "Do you want me to teach you how to fold a paper boat?" Megan asked innocently. "I think you need a boat of your own." 15 minutes later, the three of them sat on a wooden bench by Lake Erie, near the canal walk. Megan patiently guided each step, while Jack sat beside them, quietly smiling as he watched the two. "You have to fold this corner more carefully," Megan reminded, her voice surprisingly serious. "If it's not firm, the boat will sink as soon as it meets the waves." "Like this, is it right?" Jasmine carefully followed along, her hands, so used to signing multi-million-dollar contracts, now trembling over a small piece of paper. Inside, she felt a strange sensation. How long had it been since she had focused on something so simple? "Better," Megan nodded in approval. "Now you should write something on the boat." Jasmine held the pencil, hesitating. "What do you think I should write?" Megan rested her chin on her hand, thinking, "Write down what you want the most right now." "What I want the most." Jasmine sat in silence, her eyes drifting toward Lake Erie, where small waves lapped against the shore. Money? Power? Success? She had all of it, but none of it filled the emptiness inside her heart. Her gaze settled on Jack, patiently waiting, and on Megan, whose pure smile radiated trust. For the first time in her life, Jasmine felt truly accepted. Not for her reputation, not for her wealth. She wrote, "Hope for real friendship." "That's wonderful," Megan exclaimed, clapping her hands in delight. "Now, let's release the boats together." 3 paper boats, Megan's, Jasmine's, and one Jack had hastily folded, floated gently along the canal walk waters, heading out toward the vast Lake Erie. "You know," Megan said as she watched the boats drift away, "Mom once told me hope is like a seed. You can't see it grow right away, but if you patiently take care of it, it will become a strong tree." Jasmine turned to look at the 9-year-old girl, feeling as though she were being taught the most important lesson of her life. "Where did you learn that?" she asked, her voice hoarse. "From my mom. She said grown-ups often forget how to hope, so kids have to remind them." Jack looked at his daughter, his eyes filled with pride and a touch of longing. "Denise, my wife, was a social worker. She dedicated her life to helping struggling families. She always said hope is the one thing no one can ever take away from us." "What else did your mom say?" Jasmine asked softly, her heart yearning to know more about the woman who had shaped such a beautiful soul. "Mom said real family isn't the people who share your blood. It's the people who are willing to share hope with you." Megan answered with unusual seriousness. And she also said sometimes God sends a stranger to teach us about love. Tears suddenly streamed down Jasmine's cheeks. A 9-year-old girl had just spoken the very truth she had been searching for her entire 30 years of life. "What's wrong?" Megan asked worriedly. "Did I say something wrong?" Jasmine wiped her tears and gently shook her head. "No, you were right. So right." As the sun began to sink below the horizon, the golden glow of sunset bathed the waters of Lake Erie. Jack spoke up. "I need to take Megan home so she can do her homework. Would you like to stop by our place for some coffee?" Jasmine hesitated for a moment. She had never stepped into a worker's home. May I? Of course." Megan immediately grabbed Jasmine's hand, her eyes sparkling. "You'll love our house. It's small, but it's really cozy." On the road leading to the flats, Jasmine looked around. Small apartments lined closely together, old cars parked along the street. But the atmosphere here carried something her luxurious penthouse had never had: the vibrancy of a true community. "Hello, Jack," an elderly woman called down from her window, waving warmly. "Hello, Mrs. Rodriguez," Jack replied with an easy smile. "How are you today?" "Wonderful. Thanks for the bread yesterday," the old woman answered, her grin radiant. Megan leaned close to Jasmine's ear and whispered, "Mrs. Rodriguez lives alone, so on weekends Dad and I bake bread and bring it to her." Jasmine was surprised, asking softly, "Do you do that often?" Jack just shrugged. "It's nothing special. We live in the same community. We're supposed to look after each other." Look after each other. The words echoed in Jasmine's mind. In her world, people only knew about networking, but no one really cared enough to look after anyone. Jack's apartment was small, but tidy and warm. By the door still hung Denise's blue wool scarf, like a gentle reminder. On the coffee table, dozens of paper boats were neatly arranged like a small fleet of hope. "This is my collection," Megan proudly announced. "Each one carries its own hope." Jasmine carefully picked them up one by one, reading the scribbled words in colored pencil. Hope for sick children, hope for homeless people, hope for broken hearts, hope for lost dreams. "All of these? You made them?" Jasmine asked in astonishment. "Yes, I make one every day. Dad says if we send enough hope out into the world will become a better place." From the small kitchen, Jack was making coffee, his warm voice carrying over. "Megan believes the paper boats will find their way to the ocean and bring hope to the ones who need it." Jasmine looked up, meeting his eyes. "And you? Do you believe that?" Jack turned around, his eyes shining under the dim yellow light. "I believe in my daughter's heart. And I believe hope can spread in ways we could never imagine." Sitting in that tiny apartment, sipping instant coffee from an old ceramic mug, Jasmine suddenly realized she had never felt happiness like this before. Happier than at any lavish party she had ever attended. That evening, Jack and Jasmine sat together on the small sofa. Jasmine's eyes kept drifting toward the blue wool scarf hanging by the door. "Can you tell me about your wife?" she asked softly. Jack gave a sad smile and took out an old photo album. One by one, the pictures appeared. Denise, on their wedding day, holding Jack with one hand and a paper boat in the other. Denise among children at the community center, teaching them to fold boats as a way to release their anger. "She believed hope could save anyone," Jack said. "A boy who used to be violent. Now, whenever he gets angry, he folds a boat and writes down his wish. He's training to become a shipbuilder." Jasmine slowly turned another page. The last one showed Denise in the hospital, frail but still smiling, holding her final boat. Hope for my family's future. Jack's voice broke. That boat was the only thing left intact after the accident. I lost Denise at the moment I needed her most. Megan was only 7 then. How could I explain death to a child? Jasmine placed her hand on his shoulder, her eyes glistening with tears. You've done so well. Looking at Megan today, I see a strong girl, full of love. Jack nodded, his eyes shining through his tears. That's because of Denise. She left Megan a legacy, the belief in goodness. And I will protect that belief, at any cost. Monday morning, Jasmine walked into her office with a strange feeling. She carried with her both the sense of having discovered something precious in the Sullivan family and a vague fear about what was happening inside her own company. A knock on the door sounded, then Richard Caldwell entered, his face so cold it seemed to weigh down the entire room. Jasmine, we need to talk. About what, Uncle Richard? About where you went over the weekend. Richard's voice was firm, devoid of any warmth. Some people reported seeing you in the flats. Do you realize how dangerous that area is? A chill ran down Jasmine's spine. They were watching her. I just went to visit a friend. Richard stepped closer, his eyes drilling into her. What friend? Jack Sullivan? That dock worker? Jasmine's heart pounded. How do you know? Richard's lips curved into a cold smile. Have you forgotten who I am? I need to know everything that revolves around this company, and Richard Caldwell's niece associating with a laborer is not good for the family's reputation. He's a good man. Jasmine shot to her feet, her voice trembling but proud. He saved me from... From whom? Richard cut her off instantly, his sharp gaze flashing. Did something happen at the port that you haven't told me about? Jasmine froze, realizing she had let something slip. No, nothing at all. Richard sat down opposite her, his tone suddenly soft, almost caring. Jasmine, I understand. You're young, you want freedom, you want to explore. But you need to remember, we can't just mingle with people from a different class. That will only create misunderstandings and consequences you don't want. What kind of misunderstandings? Jasmine pressed, her voice low. Like the chance that you might hear things about the company that aren't true. People like Sullivan could use their connection to you to... To what? Jasmine cut him off, her eyes flashing with defiance. Richard fell silent for a few seconds, then released each word like a blade. To blackmail. To demand what doesn't belong to them. You're so naive. The words pierced straight into Jasmine's chest. Her head spun. Was Jack truly sincere? Or had she been too quick to trust? What do you want? Jasmine asked directly, her tone steely. I want you to cut all ties with Sullivan. Immediately, Richard placed a thick folder on the desk. And you'll sign this. Port restructuring. What kind of restructuring? Jasmine frowned, flipping quickly through the pages. Transferring all port management rights to a subsidiary. Richard's cold smile returned. This will allow us more flexibility in handling complicated matters. Jasmine read carefully, her heart pounding. The clauses would allow cargo to pass through the port without strict oversight. This was clearly a cover for smuggling operations. I need time to review this, Jasmine said, trying to remain calm. You have 24 hours, Richard stood, his tone brooking no refusal. And remember this. Men like Sullivan never bring anything good to people like us. That evening, on the way home from the port, Jack suddenly realized a black car was following him. His military instincts immediately made him tense. He abruptly turned into a narrow alley, waited in the shadows for a few minutes, then silently circled behind the car. Through the tinted glass, Jack saw two unfamiliar men. In their hands was a stack of photos, pictures of him, of Megan, and even of Jasmine. Jack's chest tightened. They were watching his family. Without hesitation, he rushed straight home. As soon as he entered, Jack picked up the phone and called Mrs. Rodriguez. "Ma'am, could you watch Megan for me for a while? I have an urgent matter." The old woman's voice was filled with worry. "Of course, Jack. What's going on?" "I'll explain later," Jack said quickly. "Just help me keep Megan safe." He hurriedly packed the backpack he always kept ready, a habit from his Navy days, then brought his daughter over to Mrs. Rodriguez's. "Where are you going, Daddy?" Megan asked, her eyes anxious. Jack knelt down, gripping her small shoulders tightly. "I have to take care of something important." "Stay with Mrs. Rodriguez. Don't go outside until I get back, okay?" Megan hesitated, then asked softly, as if sensing something, "Does this have to do with Miss Jasmine?" Jack hugged his daughter tightly, his voice deep but resolute. "I promise to protect everyone I love, including Jasmine." Jack dialed Jasmine's number, his voice tense. "You need to be careful. Someone is watching you. And my family, too." Jasmine was sitting in her penthouse, the yellow light casting down on the cold wooden floor. His words made her shiver, her heartbeat racing. "What? Watching? For what reason?" "I'm not sure," Jack replied, his breathing heavy. "But I suspect it's connected to what happened at the port." "Did you tell anyone about us meeting?" Jasmine froze. Instantly, her mind replayed the conversation she'd had with Richard that morning. Her voice caught in her throat. "Jack, I may have let it slip." "To whom?" "My uncle, Richard Caldwell." On the other end, a heavy silence stretched. Finally, Jack spoke, his voice dropping low. "Do you still trust him?" Jasmine closed her eyes, her trembling hand gripping the untouched glass of wine. "I used to, but now I'm not so sure." "Listen to me," Jack said, enunciating each word firmly. "Don't stay alone tonight. Go somewhere crowded, or be with someone you truly trust." "I'll find out what's going on." "Jack!" Jasmine whispered, her voice quivering. "I'm scared." Jack's voice softened, but carried unwavering strength. "I won't let anyone hurt you. I promise." That night, Jack returned to the port. Darkness blanketed the area, broken only by the flickering yellow glow of steel pillars casting light onto the damp ground. With his military experience, he moved silently between the rows of containers, blending into the night like a ghost. He needed to know exactly what was going on. Inside Frank Doyle's office, Jack searched thoroughly and found documents that made his blood run cold. A detailed list of containers transporting contraband from South America. A record of commissions paid out to port officials. And worst of all, a chain of emails from Richard Caldwell containing the chilling words, "Handle the Jasmine problem. Eliminate troublesome witnesses." Jack immediately pulled out his phone, snapping pictures of every page. His heart pounded as he discovered another horrifying plan. They intended to lure Jasmine to the port the following night, under the pretense of a document handover, but in reality, it was a setup to kidnap her. Without hesitation, Jack called the only person he could trust, Detective Carla Moreno, a police officer he had known since Denise's days working with struggling families. "Carla, it's me, Jack. I need your help. There's a major conspiracy happening at the port." "Jack?" Carla's voice was wary. "What are you talking about?" "I just got the evidence. I'll send it all to you. But most importantly, they're planning to hurt an innocent woman." I can't let that happen. Send it to me right now, Carla answered quickly, her voice sharp with resolve. I'll review everything. And Jack, be careful. If what you're saying is true, you just poked a hornet's nest. The next morning, Megan folded a paper boat unlike her usual ones. No longer bright green or yellow, this time it was red. On it, in small handwriting, she wrote, Hope for protection from danger. Why did you make this one? Mrs. Rodriguez asked curiously. Megan pressed her lips together, her eyes filled with worry. Last night, I dreamed about Miss Jasmine. She was in a very dark place, very afraid. I have to send this boat to her right away. With Mrs. Rodriguez's help, Megan called Jasmine. Miss Jasmine, I just made a special boat for you. Megan's voice trembled. You have to be careful. I feel like something bad is about to happen. Jasmine, sitting in her office with the stack of files Richard had given her, suddenly felt her heart race. What did you just say? I don't know how to explain it, Megan continued, but I'm certain you're in danger. Don't go to dark places, especially not alone. The little girl's words struck like an alarm bell. Jasmine looked again at the stack of documents before her, and for the first time, she clearly saw the dark scheme hidden behind every clause. Jasmine's phone rang. It was Richard. Jasmine, his voice was deep and cold. Have you made your decision? We need to meet tonight at the port to finalize the arrangements. Why at the port, Uncle? Jasmine asked, trying to keep calm. So you can witness firsthand what will change after this important decision. 11 p.m., Container 47. B. The board and I will be waiting for you there. The call ended, leaving Jasmine with a chill down her spine. She knew this was the trap, but at the same time, she understood it might also be her only chance to expose the truth. She dialed Jack's number. They want me at the port tonight, Jasmine said softly. I know it's a trap, but if I don't go, they'll find another way to eliminate me. This may be my last chance to get evidence. On the other end, silence stretched, broken only by Jack's slow breathing. Then his voice came, firm and decisive. Don't go. It's too dangerous. Jack, I have to. I don't have any other choice. A tense pause. Then Jack's voice rang out, strong. If you're determined to go, I'll be there. I'll protect you. Jack, you don't have to. I promised Denise I would never stand still while an innocent person was being harmed. And I promised Megan I wouldn't let you face this alone. That evening, Jack sat in the small apartment, quietly reviewing the evidence he had gathered from the port. Detective Carla Moreno had confirmed she would come with a support team, but they still needed more direct proof that Richard and his associates intended to harm Jasmine. Daddy! Megan ran over, holding a white paper boat in her hands. I made this one for you. Jack took it and read the scribbled yet meaningful words. Hope for heroes to come home safe. His heart tightened. Jack pulled his daughter close. Sweetheart, I promise I'll come home to you. I know you will, Megan replied with an unexpectedly serious tone. Because Mom is protecting you from heaven. And Miss Jasmine needs you too. Jack leaned back slightly, looking straight into his daughter's eyes. What did you just say? Megan pressed her lips together, then whispered, Last night, I dreamed about Mom. She said Miss Jasmine is the person God sent to make our family whole again. But first, you have to save her from the bad people. Jack froze, unsure whether to feel more surprised or moved by his daughter's extraordinary sensitivity. Are you afraid? He asked gently. Megan shook her head, her golden hair swaying softly. No, because I believe in you. And I believe in love. In the luxurious penthouse, Jasmine sat silently at her vanity, her eyes fixed on her own reflection in the mirror. She wore a black suit, the outfit she always called her armor whenever walking into fierce boardroom battles. But today was different. Today, she was preparing to face the truth about her own family. On the table, amid the perfume bottles and glittering jewelry, lay something simple, the paper boat Jack had once taught her to fold. On it, the scribbled words, "Hope for real friendship," appeared like a reminder. Jasmine picked it up, her hands trembling slightly. Strangely, from that tiny piece of paper, she felt a quiet strength rising within her. Suddenly, the phone rang. The screen displayed a name, Victoria Caldwell, her cousin. "Jasmine," Victoria's voice was sharp and cold. "I hear you're going to sign the document tonight?" "Good. It's time you understood your place in this family." "My place?" Jasmine asked, her voice calm, but her eyes in the mirror as sharp as blades. "To be a good girl. To do as the elders decide. Don't entertain foolish illusions about autonomy or independence. You already have everything you need." Jasmine clenched the paper boat in her hand. "I have everything except the truth." A heavy silence followed. Then Victoria lowered her voice, sounding both like a warning and a threat. "Be careful what you say, Jasmine. Some decisions, once made, can never be taken back." The call ended, leaving the room in silence. Jasmine sat motionless, but her heart roiled. She understood now. Not only Richard, but Victoria too was involved in the scheme. Her whole family, every one of them, had turned against her. In that suffocating loneliness, the image of Jack and Megan suddenly appeared in her mind. For the first time in her life, Jasmine had people who truly cared for her. Not because she was a Caldwell, not because of money or power, but simply because she was herself. 11 p.m. The port of Cleveland was shrouded in dense darkness, with only a few yellow lights spilling down from the massive steel cranes. The waves of Lake Erie crashed against the shore with an eerie sound, like a warning that this place was not meant for the faint of heart. Jasmine drove slowly toward container 47B, her heart pounding inside her chest. She knew Jack was hiding somewhere nearby, but the fear still pressed down on her like a ghost on her shoulders. Richard Caldwell was already waiting, flanked by Frank Doyle and 4 burly men in dark coats. Under the yellow light, their shadows loomed like giant, menacing figures. "Jasmine," Richard spoke, a cold smile etched on his lips. "You're right on time." "Good. What do you want?" Jasmine stopped the car 10 meters away, her hands still gripping the steering wheel tightly. "Get out of the car, my dear," Richard gestured. "We have many things to discuss." Taking a deep breath, Jasmine slowly stepped out. Her hand clutched the briefcase. Inside was a recorder, her only hope of exposing them. "Discuss what?" "Your future," Richard replied, his voice like a knife. "And the fact that you know far too much you shouldn't." Frank stepped forward, his eyes vicious. "You've met with Sullivan." "What did you tell him?" "I don't know what you're talking about." Jasmine struggled to keep her voice steady. "Don't pretend!" Richard roared, his voice echoing between the rows of containers. "You think I don't know you've been associating with that lowly dock worker? You think I don't know you've been secretly investigating the port operations?" Richard's tone now was nothing like the seemingly caring Uncle Jasmine once knew. This was his true self, greedy, ruthless, and scheming. "So you're admitting there's something to hide?" Jasmine asked, fighting to suppress her trembling. "Hide?" Richard let out a cruel laugh. "Jasmine, you're so naive. This is business, and this business has brought billions of dollars to the Caldwell family. By smuggling drugs and weapons? Jasmine shot back. Frank sneered in reply. By taking advantage of every opportunity. And now, you are the problem. The only problem here. Ice you! The deep, familiar voice rang out from behind a container. Jack's figure slowly emerged under the dim yellow light. His eyes were sharp as steel, each step deliberate and resolute. In this moment, he was no longer the gentle dock worker. Before them stood a former Navy man, ready for battle. "Sullivan!" Frank roared, his voice a mix of shock and fury. "What the hell are you doing here?" Jack walked straight toward them, his tone calm but carrying the weight of a sentence pronounced, "I'm here to protect her, from men like you, and I'm here to put an end to this filthy game." Richard narrowed his eyes, looking at Jack with contempt, a cold smile curling on his lips. A dock worker thinks he can stand against the Caldwell family? Do you even know who you're facing? "Oh, I know," Jack answered, his voice dropping low, his eyes flashing with fury. "A man willing to betray, even kill his own niece for money. And that is the kind of man I despise the most." "Kill?" Richard let out a mocking laugh, feigning surprise. "Who said anything about killing? We only want to persuade Jasmine to understand her true place." Frank Doyle sneered, pulling a gun from his waistband, its black barrel aimed directly at Jack. "But with this one, it's different," he growled. "He knows too much." Frank raised the gun straight at Jack, his voice dripping with contempt. "Who do you think you are? Rambo?" Jack stood still for a beat, his eyes unblinking. "No, I'm just a father who wants his daughter to be proud." The words had barely left his mouth when Jack suddenly lunged to the right, just as the gunshot thundered through the night. The bullet tore through the air, slamming into the steel wall of a container. Jack rolled, sliding behind a stack of cargo, disappearing into the darkness. "Run!" Jack shouted toward Jasmine. "Run toward the lights!" But Jasmine froze. Instead of running, she quickly switched on the recorder hidden in her briefcase and slipped it behind a crate. This was the evidence she needed. She wouldn't let the chance slip away. Richard roared, furious. "Find him and kill him! Don't let him live!" The four men immediately spread out, scouring the labyrinth of containers. But they had no idea Jack had once learned to fight in the shattered streets of the Middle East. To him, this was nothing more than a familiar battlefield. He moved like a ghost, appearing, vanishing, leaving fear to spread in the hearts of his enemies. Thud! Jack's fist clamped down, taking one man out from behind, sending him crashing to the ground without a sound. Thud! The second turned just in time to be thrown down, his gun flying from his grip. Jack scooped it up in one fluid motion. Gunfire erupted, Frank firing wildly into the shadowed rows of containers. "Come out! Come out, you coward!" A deep voice rang out from above. "You want me out here?" Frank looked up, only to see Jack leaping down from the top of a container. Crash! The punch landed like a hammer, smashing straight into Frank's face. He staggered back, reeling, as Jack instantly closed in. The fight exploded. Frank was big, powerful, but Jack was faster, more agile, every strike sharp and precise, the strikes of a man who had survived the fiercest battles. While Jack was grappling with Frank, Richard suddenly lunged forward, seizing Jasmine's arm and pressing a cold knife against her throat. "Enough!" Richard roared, his eyes bloodshot. "Sullivan, come out right now, or I'll kill her!" Jack froze, his eyes sweeping across the scene before him. Jasmine trembled, the blade already grazing her skin. Slowly, Jack raised his hands and stepped out from cover. "Smart," Richard sneered, his voice like steel. Now we'll finish this, once and for all. Uncle Richard. Jasmine's voice shook, but her eyes gleamed with determination. Why? Why are you doing this to your own family? Family? Richard scoffed, his laughter echoing through the maze of containers. You think this is about family? This is about business, Jasmine. The Caldwell Group was never a charity. We do whatever it takes to profit. Even murder? Jasmine asked, tears streaming down her face, but her voice still defiant. Yes, Richard replied curtly, without a flicker of hesitation. Even eliminating obstacles. Did you really think your father built this empire by playing fair? Jasmine's eyes widened in shock. My father? Richard leaned closer to her ear, his voice hissing like a curse. That's right. Thomas Caldwell, the father you worship, was the one who started it all. 20 years ago, he paved the way for every money-laundering scheme, every smuggling run. He didn't die of a heart attack like you believe. He died under the pressure when the FBI began tightening the noose. And who stepped in to cover everything up? Me! Jasmine's world shattered. No, it can't be. My father. He knew everything, Richard shouted, his bloodshot eyes blazing. He didn't just know. He created it. And now you want to destroy your father's legacy? For the sake of a worthless dock worker? Jack locked eyes with Jasmine, his voice low but resolute. I promised my daughter I would protect everyone we love. And I promised my late wife I would never let evil win. A foolish promise, Frank sneered, wiping the blood from the corner of his mouth. He had regained his balance, the black gun now aimed squarely at Jack. Jack didn't blink. Maybe. But those promises are what make me who I am. Suddenly, a clear, piercing cry tore through the tense night air. Daddy! Everyone froze and turned. Under the pale yellow lights of the port, Megan, just 9 years old, was running toward Jack, her blonde ponytail streaming in the night wind. Megan! Jack gasped, his heart stopping in his chest. What are you doing here? I snuck away from Mrs. Rodriguez to save you, Megan shouted, her eyes blazing with fiery determination. I can't let you face the bad people alone. In that instant, the whole world seemed to hold its breath. A small child charging straight into the middle of a standoff left everyone stunned, paralyzed by shock. Frank faltered, his hands trembling. For a fleeting second of hesitation, the gun lowered, and it was that brief moment Jack had been waiting for. Thud! Jack lunged forward, delivering a strike that sent Frank's gun flying. The two men crashed onto the cold steel floor, the clang echoing as they wrestled. Frank roared, trying to crush Jack's throat. Jack twisted, countering with the sharp, efficient moves of a seasoned veteran. Just then, a siren wailed in the distance. Red-blue lights swept across the rows of containers, drawing closer. Richard flinched. As the police beams struck the yard, he instantly shoved Jasmine aside and bolted toward a massive container stacked with documents and contraband. His face contorted with panic. No! Jasmine cried, chasing after him. Richard yanked out a lighter, his hand trembling yet resolute. If you won't cooperate, then it all goes up in flames. Stop! Jasmine screamed, but too late. The lighter flew inside. Whoosh! Fire erupted violently, devouring papers and chemicals. Thick black smoke rose like a pillar. The inferno's glare painted everyone's faces in a hellish red. Sensing the danger, Jack scooped up Megan and pulled Jasmine back toward the flashing lights. Run! The container's about to blow. Boom! The explosion shook the entire port. Shockwaves hurled crates into the air. Flames shot skyward, igniting the night and casting the steel cranes in a fiery glow. Within the blaze, Richard staggered, attempting to flee, but a shard of metal tore into his leg, sending him sprawling, his face twisted in agony. Red-blue lights flooded the scene. Fire trucks stormed in, foam spraying. Police swarmed. Detective Carla Moreno led the charge. "Cleveland PD! Drop your weapons!" Jack held Megan tightly, placing a reassuring hand on Jasmine's shoulder. "We're fine. But there are a few men here who need medical attention." Frank and his henchmen were cuffed. Richard lay on a stretcher, his leg mangled, a shining cuff snapping shut. The photos, emails, and Richard's recorded confession pieced together the full picture of the smuggling ring. Carla turned to Jasmine. "Are you ready to testify?" "You're the key witness." Jasmine looked around. Jack kneeling to check if Megan was hurt, the flames subdued under a blanket of white foam, Richard being loaded into an ambulance, the cuffs clinking. She drew a deep breath, her voice unwavering. "I'll do whatever it takes to see justice served." 2 hours later, in the back of a police car, Jack, Jasmine, and Megan sat waiting for the paperwork to be completed. Megan had fallen asleep on Jack's shoulder, her breathing steady, her face weary after a night of chaos. Jasmine whispered softly, as if afraid to wake the child, "Why was Megan there tonight?" Jack smiled, a mixture of pride and exhaustion. "She said she dreamed I was in danger." She couldn't sleep, so she slipped away from Mrs. Rodriguez and ran straight to the port. Luckily, she came at the right moment. Jasmine gently brushed Megan's soft hair, her eyes softening. "She saved our lives. If it hadn't been for her distracting Frank." "She has a special gift," Jack said, his voice low. "Just like her mother." Silence hung for a moment, broken only by the distant wail of sirens outside. Then Jasmine spoke quietly. "Jack, I don't know what to say. You risked your life to save me." "Why?" Jack lifted his gaze, his eyes steady. "Because I can't stand by and watch someone I care about get hurt. And because Megan needs to see that there are still people in this world willing to stand up and fight for what's right." "Someone you care about?" Jasmine repeated, her heart pounding. Jack nodded. "I know we come from two different worlds. I'm just a dock worker, and you're a CEO. But—" Jasmine leaned in slightly, waiting. "But what?" Jack drew a deep breath, his voice deep but sincere. "But these past few days, being with you and Megan, I've felt happier than I have at any time since Denise passed away. You've brought light back into our lives." Tears shimmered in Jasmine's eyes. Her voice trembled. "Jack, Jack laid his hand gently over hers, smiling. "You don't have to say anything. Just know that no matter what happens, I'll still be here. For you." The morning after the storm. The first sunlight streamed through the small window in the flats. Jasmine awoke on the sofa, still wrapped in Denise's knitted scarf. In the kitchen, Jack quietly brewed coffee, while Megan sat at the table, carefully drawing a colorful paper boat. "What are you drawing?" Jasmine asked. "This boat will carry all the bad things far away, and only leave the good ones behind." Jasmine smiled, a gentle calm settling in her heart. That afternoon, at Public Square, she wasn't dressed in an expensive suit, but simply a white shirt and jeans. Before dozens of cameras, Jasmine spoke with steady resolve. "My family has hidden crimes for 20 years. I no longer wish to stay silent. I choose truth, justice, and a life where I can hold my head high." Right after the press conference, her assets were frozen, the penthouse seized, and her high society friends vanished. Standing before Caldwell Tower with only a small suitcase, Jasmine called Jack. "I have nowhere else to go." "Come to our home," Jack answered simply. "You're not a burden." Your family in the flats. Jasmine learned to cook, to shop for groceries, and sometimes broke down in tears over her losses. But whenever she faltered, Jack would hand her Denise's knitted scarf, and Megan would teach her how to fold paper boats to find peace again. From the old scholarship thank you letters, Jasmine found new meaning. She founded the Hope Fleet Fund, a program to help dock workers' children train for future careers. The name came from Megan's paper boats, tiny vessels carrying hope into the vast sea. Dock workers pitched in money, Cleveland police offered cooperation, and a local church lent space for classes. The Hope Fleet Fund quickly spread. Megan became the Little Ambassador, launching the Paper Boats of Hope project for children everywhere. One evening on the canal walk, as they watched paper boats glimmer on the water under the lights, Jack asked, "Do you regret it, leaving everything behind for this life?" Jasmine smiled. "I only regret not doing it sooner. For the first time in my life, I feel truly alive." Then she took his hand. "And I choose love. I choose you. I choose Megan. This is my family." 6 months later, the Hope Fleet Fund had already helped nearly 100 students. One night, Megan sat between Jack and Jasmine, folding a boat that read, "Hope for our family to be together forever." Jack looked at his daughter and asked, "Would you like Jasmine to be your mom?" "Yes!" Megan squealed, hugging them both tightly. Jasmine laughed through her tears, and Megan whispered, "We're already a family." The papers just make it official, and the story doesn't end here. Not only for Jack and Jasmine, but for everyone who believes in the power of kindness, courage, and true love. Sometimes, the world only needs one person brave enough to say, "This is not right." Someone who believes every life deserves protection. Someone who understands that family isn't just blood. It's the hearts willing to share hope with one another. Out there may still be dark containers, places where people feel fear and loneliness. But there are also countless Jack Sullivans, ordinary people with extraordinary hearts, ready to step out of the shadows to protect the light. And there are countless Megans, children who believe that hope can float, even when everything else is sinking. Remember this: family isn't where you're born. It's where love is nurtured and allowed to grow. And true love will always find its way. If this story touched your heart, leave a comment, and don't forget to subscribe to True Tale Time, where we tell stories that should never be forgotten. Stories of real people, real love, and real hope. Because every one of us deserves someone who will say, "I will protect you." And sometimes, you might be the one who becomes that person for someone else.